Welcome, everybody. This is our Clarktoberfest.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Garrett Lawton. I'm the Director of Financial Assistance at Clark, as Terry mentioned. I have been in financial aid for many, many years, working both at private liberal arts colleges and universities, as well as large land grant universities. So I bring a lot of diverse experience to the job, and I'm really happy to be speaking with you tonight.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. And just a little bit of housekeeping. We will use the Q&A feature to answer any questions. So as we go along, you can feel free to chat your questions. We will answer the questions after the very short presentation. We just have a couple of slides to share with you what we feel is some of the most important info, but we're going to leave lots of time to get to your specific questions.
Okay, everybody, so this is my cue. I'm going to just take a minute to talk about the fact that I see some people are saying that they're from countries far and near. If you're an international student, I'll talk a little bit about your process in just a second. My first opening comments will be to students who are U.S. citizen and permanent residents of the United States. So for those of you that fall into that category, there are basically two, possibly three forms that you'll need to fill out online for us. The first is the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA. You'll be using your 2019 income for that. Now, the free application for federal student aid is just as it sounds. It's a free form. It is the form that colleges like Clark, colleges and universities like Clark use to award federal forms of financial aid. So those would be your federal direct Stafford loans, your federal Pell Grant, your federal SEOG or supplemental educational opportunity grant. And then for those states that have a state grant program, they will also use the FAFSA to help determine what state grant you might be eligible for. In addition, so the free application for federal student aid is filled out by the student and parents. If the parents are divorced, separated, or widowed, only the custodial parent fills out the free application for federal student aid along with the student. The next form that you would need is the CSS profile. And again, you'll use your 2019 income. If the case for your family is that your primary parents are divorced or separated, not living together, then the other parent will also fill out their own form of the profile form. The two forms are totally secure. One parent doesn't see what the other parent is entering into those forms. And we'll talk a little bit more in special circumstances if you are unable to get that information from your other parent. For international students, because you are not eligible for forms of federal aid, you do not do the FAFSA. You're only going to do the CSS profile using 2019 income. For both forms, one of the very last questions asks you what schools you want to release the information you're providing to, and each school has its own code. So for the FAFSA, our code is 002139, but there's a handy drop-down menu, and you can click Clark from that menu. You can release the information on the FAFSA to many schools. Same thing with the profile. You get towards the end and they'll ask you what schools. Our code for the profile is 3279. And again, you can release it to more than one school. Unlike the FAFSA, the profile form does cost some money. It's $25 for the first school you're sending it to, and then I believe it's $19 for each additional school. If you qualify for free or reduced lunch in your school, then you will usually qualify for a waiver of the payment for the profile form. And again, for international students, you would only do the profile form. You don't have to worry about doing the FAFSA form. Just quickly, the deadlines, we've brought them into alignment with your deadlines in admission for the various rounds that you're applying for. So if you're applying early action or early decision 1, it's November 15th. If you're applying early decision 2 or regular decision, our deadlines are January 15th. Okay, next slide. So you can you can track your progress via the financial aid checklist on the applicant status page. We do update that information once weekly after we've downloaded the new FAFSAs and profiles for that week. Also, as our file readers are reading files, if they need some additional information, they'll usually email a student letting them know we need some additional information, and they might add that as a necessary document on that applicant status page. As long as a student remains incomplete, they'll get a regular email from us saying, hey, we need some more documents from you, and listing the documents that need to be sent to us. Please try to get them to us as quickly as you can, because while we would still consider you for financial aid, we need to know information about your financial circumstances before we can release that decision. So the sooner you can get monitor all of this and get everything that we request from you into us, the more quickly we can turn that around. As I said, we'll reach out to you directly if there's anything else we need. And when I say anything else we need, sometimes we might need a copy of the parents' W-2 forms, or we might need some clarification on the number of household and the number in college, or we might see some information that isn't straightforward and we might want some clarification. So it's not very difficult information, and usually can be cleared up with a quick email back to us, or perhaps a phone call. We do not participate in the IDoC, which is the CSS document imaging system, primarily because we do not require each family to give us a copy of their tax return or tax returns transcript. What IDoC does is it scans all those documents and sends them to the schools that participate electronically. And since we don't need those documents, we do not participate in IDoC. We don't ask for many tax returns, but when we do, it'll be a little bit later in the process, and we'll give you information about how you can get that information to us securely. I did just want to say a quick thing here about the financial aid application process in general. There really aren't too many mistakes you can make. I know it can be really anxiety producing to think about doing your financial aid application. The way that the forms are now, with them being online, they all have a bunch of smart logic built into them. It's really, really hard to make a mistake. So the form will actually stop you and ask a question if you're entering a data point that doesn't seem to make sense. The only real mistake you can make is not being on time. So make sure that you're really organized about how you approach this task. Make sure you know what the actual deadline is. Maybe make yourself a little Excel spreadsheet or a whiteboard on a wall with the school listed and the documents listed in the due date. So you make sure you get everything into us on time. And I think the other thing I want to say real quickly too is that we do realize that this year with the pandemic and everything, while we're asking on both the FAFSA and the profile for 2019 income, we realize that 2020 looks very, very different for most families. So what we're going to ask you to do is on the profile form itself, there's a spot where you can kind of free form, write in other circumstances that you want us to consider. But I'm also going to encourage you to write us a letter and be specific with your change in information. So by that, I mean, if your income was $50,000 last year, and in 2020, it's going to be $30,000 because you were working fewer hours, we need to have that figure. That will give us an opportunity to take a look at your award, the information in your FAFSA and profile, and see if we can make some adjustment. I'm going to encourage you in every case, whenever you do submit a letter like that, is if you're admitted and you get an award letter from us, follow up with our office and make sure that we took that information into account. Sometimes your letter and our reading of the file can sort of cross in the mail, so to speak, and we might not have gotten that information when we read the letter. And most things you're going to want to either send to us by email if it's a document that doesn't include things like your social security number or other personally identifiable information, or we also will make available a fax number on all of our correspondence with you. Next slide, please. So in terms of when once we get all the information from you, we read the files, we come up with award letters, and hopefully when my colleagues in admission are getting ready to give you the good news that you're admitted, we'll also be getting together your financial aid award letter so that you'll get the information at the same time. So for early decision students, we'll notify you in mid-December. For early action, you'll be notified in mid-January. For early decision 2, those notifications go out mid-February. And for regular decision students, we send those notifications out mid to late March. We'll send you a nice large 8.5 by 5.5 envelope, I believe that's the size, with an award letter and our award guide, which more fully explains the various types of funds that are on your award letter for you, and also gives you some information about our financial aid policies in general. It also has a page that will help walk you through how to calculate what your bill might be at Clark. So you'll get a paper award letter. You'll also get that handy financial aid information booklet from us. You'll also be able to see a version of the award letter online as well. So we make it available in both formats. The online information does go out to the student's login, so there isn't a separate login for parents, unfortunately. And then any mail that we send you is also addressed to the student. But we get those up online really quickly. Sometimes you might actually be able to see them online before you get them in the mail. So next slide. So we purposely left this for a lot of questions, but I think Terry first wants to say a few things about scholarships at Clark.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, so everything Jennifer was talking about was really about applying for need-based financial aid, but Clark also has a really robust merit scholarship program. All of our applicants, if we admit them, are then considered for merit scholarships. There's nothing special a student needs to do to be considered for the majority of them. Merit scholarships are based on the holistic review of the application, so they're not pure academic scholarships or looking at any one part of the application. We look at you as a whole student and person when determining eligibility for merit scholarships. Merit scholarships range from $14,000 to $20,000, and you're notified of that at the same time as you're notified of your admit decision. And if you apply for need-based aid, your need-based financial aid package. So like Jennifer said, we want to give you all of that information all at once, because that's the information you need to really start considering Clark in a realistic way. The only two scholarships that do require a separate process are the Global Scholarship. The Global Scholarship is for students that are either international students or U.S. students who have spent their entire high school career abroad, living and going to school in an international country. The other one that requires a separate application is the Presidential LEAP Scholarship. Global scholarships have varying amounts, usually maxing out at about $22,000, $23,000 per year. The Presidential LEAP Scholarship is our most competitive award. It actually covers tuition, room, and board. Because it's so generous, we are obviously limited in how many we can give of those. And those usually go to 2 to 4 applicants a year. So that one is very competitive. But both of those scholarships, you just have to indicate on the Common App that you're interested in being considered for those scholarships, and we will follow up via email with the links to the actual scholarship applications. And those scholarship applications are due 2 weeks after the admissions deadline. So even if you wait, I don't encourage waiting, but if you do wait until the deadline to hit submit on your Common application, you still will have a couple of weeks if you want to apply for either of those scholarship programs. We do already have some questions in, so we'll get started with those. So you can continue to chat in questions as we go through, and Jennifer and I will answer them as we go along. Jennifer, can you talk about why we require the CSS profile and what the benefit is of completing that form?
Sure. So lots of colleges and universities like Clark that have a lot of their own funding to award need to get a little bit more information from families to ensure that we're distributing our awards fairly. So while the profile will be asking you many questions that you've already filled out on the FAFSA about income and taxes and things like that, it will also ask you questions about a few more questions about assets, home value, home equity. It'll also give you an opportunity to let us know if you have extra expenses as well. So it kind of cuts both ways. We get more information to see if we can help award some additional funding because you have special circumstances. So basically the profile just gives us a fuller picture of the family's true ability to help fund the education, whether it's due to assets that are not included on the FAFSA or it's due to expenses that are included on the FAFSA as well.
Excellent. If somebody does have a letter that they want to send explaining some special circumstances, as you said, the example between 2020 and 2019 income, who should they be sending that letter to?
Honestly, right now, because we are in the office on a limited basis, I would go ahead and fax that to us. And our fax number is right on our website. And I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. So just go ahead and send that to our fax machine. We're able to actually pick that up electronically and tie it right to your electronic record. So it's the easiest way for us to get that information and review it.
Excellent. Just a reminder to people, if you do have questions, I see a couple of them coming in through the chat, and I will try to monitor that also. But if you could put them in the Q&A feature, that is the primary thing we're looking at. And so we'll see your question quicker there. Jennifer, I can take this one, or you can take this one. You tell me. Can you talk a little bit about, is Clark Admissions need blind?
Okay, so Clark is what we call need sensitive. In other words, we do need to make sure that we keep our balance, our budget in balance. So for some students, if they have a large amount of financial need, it might affect our ability to admit them. For most students, it does not even come into play. That's how I would describe it. Maybe you would say something else about it, Terry.
Nope, I would agree with that. Fully for domestic students, we are need sensitive, but for the majority of students, that doesn't come into the final decision-making process. That is less true for international students. We are much more need aware for international students because we have a cap on how much aid we're able to provide an international student. And that typically is about $30,000 a year, which covers about half of the costs. So for international students, because they do need to have proof of funding to get a visa, they really do need to be able to provide funding of at least $30,000 for us to really be able to seriously consider them for admission, unless they happen to be one of those couple of students that receive the Presidential Leave Scholarship. So for domestic students, I completely agree, need aware, but it doesn't impact many applicants. For international students, we are definitely a little more need aware than that. Can you also talk a little bit about, do we meet 100% of aid or 100% of need?
Yeah, sure. So I did look this up because we're in the process of calculating that stat for the students who entered this past fall 20. But for the fall of 2019, on average, we met 92% of need. And I will venture a guess that when we calculate it for the students who just started, it'll be more like 94%, maybe even 95%. And for the example that the student, the writer gave us here for a family making $20,000 and a family of 6, typically that family is going to get one of our very best need-based financial aid award packages. And often in the first year, when we talk about strategy for paying, often in the first year, students will also bring some outside scholarships in with them that will help them get through that first year, financially speaking. And often those scholarships will end with the first year. But by the time a student is a second year, there are some things on campus that they can do to help pay down the bill a little bit. So specifically, they might be able to be a resident advisor in the dorms. This is a real job. They get a grant to help cover the cost of their room. They also get an additional small grant to help cover some of the cost of their meal plan. So it is a well-paid, and they also get a paycheck. So it is a well-paid position that really does help students pay for their cost of education. There also are some outside scholarships that will continue through the second, third, and fourth year. In addition, many students can qualify for some additional low-cost loan assistance through various programs. So it's really, I would always tell people to go ahead and apply, because you don't know unless you apply. And then when you get to the point where you're looking at your award, definitely make sure you have a conversation with somebody in our office about what your bottom line expenses will be, and what other things might be open to you to help pay that bill, not only the first year, but the second, third, and fourth year.
Excellent. I'm going to tackle the next couple.
Okay.
So this question is, can I apply for need-based aid and merit-based aid? And the answer is absolutely. Some of our students just get merit-based aid, some just get need-based aid, but the vast majority get a combination of the two. Like I said, most of our merit scholarships you don't have to apply for. You'll automatically be considered for them. And then what happens is the admissions office determines your merit scholarship. We let the financial aid know that, and then they build on top of that scholarship. So if you have need still after the consideration of your merit scholarship, that's when they'll add the need-based aid to your award. But absolutely, you can apply for and be considered for both need-based and merit-based aid. The next question, Jennifer, I might tag team you a little bit.
Okay.
It's really about living off campus versus on campus. And the first thing I have to say about that is we do have a 2-year residency requirement, meaning that you have to live on campus your first year and sophomore year. This requirement is only waived if you live in the city of Worcester and will be living within your primary residence. So where you live right now, if that's in Worcester, we can waive the housing requirement if you live in the city and plan to stay living with your family. But Jennifer, do you want to talk a little bit about how living on or off campus impacts the financial aid award that they might actually be considered for?
Sure. So you would have, we assume most people are living on campus because of the policy that Terry just mentioned. So when you're living on campus, the average room and board is about $9,800 for the year. When you move off campus and stay at home in your family's home, so if you live in the Worcester area, you don't pay that $9,800. So we do reduce your financial aid, but only by $2,500 or for the semester, or $5,000 for the year. So you are still saving some significant amount of money, because there is still we still keep the full $9,800 room and board costs in the overall calculation of your financial aid. In other words, we don't set that to zero. We're still aiding you as if you had about $5,000 of room and board costs, even though you're living at home with parents. If you're living in an apartment, as many of our upper class students do, then because you're paying rent on your own, your financial aid remains the same, just as if you were living in the dorms and on the meal plan.
Excellent, thank you. And the next question is a two-parter about merit scholarship. So I'll take this one. First is, how many students apply per year for the LEAP scholarship? Like I said, it is our most competitive scholarship. Last year, we had about 500 students that completed the application, and the application is 2 additional essays. Then our admissions committee and our admissions staff has a really hard decision-making process. We look through all of those. We narrow it down to somewhere around 15 students interview. And then from that, it's 10 to 15 students interview, depending on the quality of the pool. And then from there, depending on the year and how many we can give, we award 2 to 5 scholarships, I would say. Probably 3 to 5 is more likely. So it is a very competitive scholarship, but what I will often tell students that say, well, it's so competitive, I shouldn't bother, I can guarantee if you don't write the essays, you will not get the scholarship. So if you're a strong student and a well-rounded community member, all it costs you is the time to write 2 additional essays, and potentially you would be able to get a tuition, room, and board scholarship. So I would encourage you to consider applying for it, even though it is a very competitive scholarship. The second question is, can students be awarded more than 1 merit scholarship? And the answer there is no. We give you the highest scholarship that you're eligible for. So there's different ratings, and whichever one is the highest that you're eligible for is the one that you will receive, but you will only receive 1 merit-based scholarship. Going back to the need-based side of things, Jennifer, does Clark cap home equity in the calculation of assets?
So that's a financial aid, an in-depth financial aid question, and I love it. So a lot of schools will cap the home equity in the calculation. And typically those are schools that have really large endowments and therefore really large financial aid budgets. So we do use all of the reported home equity in the calculation. The time that we can actually give families a bit of a break on that is, for instance, on appeal, if parents are very close to retirement and are not have not prepared through more mainstream means of saving, like IRAs and things like that. We might reduce the home equity we use a little bit, or if the parent is widowed or a widower, we might reduce some of the home equity. But that's as we're reading the files. When you're asked the question, you should report the home value, the home debt, and we'll take it from there. But please, we don't want you to overestimate your home value. Please make sure that you put an appropriate home value on. Some people don't take the time to really look into it, and they overreport their home value. So we want to make sure we get it right.
Jennifer, are there any financial opportunities presented to legacy students? The person asking, both of her parents have attended Clark. So if you have Clark family members or Clark alums in your family, is there any financial advantages?
Sure. No, we actually package everybody who presents to us with the same sort of financial picture in the same way.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question is about application fee waivers. Is it possible to get one? You do not need an application fee waiver because our application fee is actually $0. We made that decision this summer in light of the economic impact that comes around with a global pandemic. So we didn't want to put an extra barrier in place by having students have to request a fee waiver when we knew that there would be more interest in that. So we've just eliminated the fee altogether. So when you're on the Common App, you'll be able to bypass the application payment section. Next questions are about, are there any scholarships specifically for students interested in the sciences? There are not. We have an open admissions process, meaning that if you are admitted to the university, you can enroll and major in any major. And so our scholarships are not tied to what you want to study, because a lot of our students come in undecided or change their mind or add a double major. So we don't want to put students in a pigeonhole and say, you have this scholarship, but you must major in a specific area. So our merit scholarships are open to all students, no matter what they're going to major in. And then they're free to choose any major they want when they come to Clark. There's a question also, question about the global scholarship and the LEAP scholarship and how to indicate interest. When filling out the Common App, when you get to Clark specific questions, it will ask you if you want to be considered for the Presidential LEAP Scholarship or the Global Scholarship. And you can indicate one or both of those, depending on your circumstances. And then we'll get that information when the application gets submitted and follow up accordingly with the student. To follow up with that, there's a question about eligibility for the Global Scholarship, and to restate that. So international students, so no matter where they live or go to school, if you have an international citizenship, you can be considered for the Global Scholarship. Or if you're a US student who has spent their high school years abroad, so they've gone to an international high school. Those are the two target populations for the Global Scholarship. Then we have a question about how do gap years impact need-based financial aid and merit scholarships?
So in terms of actually both, if you're approved to take a gap year, you'll just want to be sure that you do the FAFSA for the subsequent year. It's available October 1st in any given year. So you'll want to do the next year's FAFSA and make sure you get it into us. When we, the only risk you're taking there is if your family had a very different year financially from one year to the next. We typically look to give you the same merit award that you were awarded by our colleagues in admission, and then we do a new need-based award for you based on the information that's presented in that updated FAFSA.
Right, and the merit scholarship will automatically be deferred with the student. So if you do have a merit scholarship and you defer your enrollment, the scholarship part automatically defers as well. It's just the need-based aid that you have to reapply for. Jennifer,
so I read this.
Oh,
to Gary
Did you have something else
about
to
the
say about that,
FAFSA.
Jennifer?
No, I was just looking at this next question, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so the next question, can you clarify what year income should be used on the FAFSA? And is that just a clerk requirement or are all schools requiring the same year?
Yep, so you're gonna, for the award year that you're applying for, you're gonna wanna use the 2019 income. And as you log into these forms, it'll tell you right there what year they want and what line to go to and where to find the information. So you do want to be using 2019 income. You don't need a whole separate FAFSA just for Clark. You need to release the FAFSA with the 29 income on it to all the schools that you're applying to. That's if you're attending for the next cycle. I don't think you're talking about applying for this coming spring semester.
Let's see, this is more of an admissions question, so I'm going to take it. Do you require first semester grades to be published before acceptance and financial aid are sent out for EA and ED applicants? In general, the answer is no. If your school has those available and can submit them, we absolutely would love to see them, but we will not hold the decision to get the first semester grades unless we need those first semester grades to finalize a decision. So for example, if a student had a really rocky 9th and 10th grade year, but junior year was really strong, and we just want to make sure that that student is continuing to have the success that they found in 11th grade, we would want to wait and hold those for those senior grades. We will reach out to the student and the school if we are waiting for first semester grades before we release a decision. Typically for ED, most schools, the first semester doesn't end till January, so we wouldn't have those. Sometimes we'd have first quarter grades if a school's on a quarter system, but we will reach out if we are waiting for those grades. But in general, the school should send them when they're available, but it won't delay decisions. Next question is about, are merit scholarships only available for the first year of attendance? So our merit scholarships are 4-year awards as long as you stay in what's called satisfactory academic progress, meaning you are making progress towards your graduation. Jennifer can talk a little bit about more of the specifics of that because it's the same standard for need-based aid. But if you're making satisfactory academic progress, you will retain this merit scholarship each year for 4 years. So it is a continuing scholarship.
So the satisfactory academic progress rules state that you have to maintain a GPA of at least 2.0, and that you have to be making a certain amount of progress towards your degree. So for the first year of attendance, both semesters, you have to complete five classes or 5 units, as we call them. Second year at 6, third and fourth at 7 each, in order to be making a good pace towards your graduation. We have the more information about our SAP policy on our website, but it's also in the booklet that we send out with the award letter, so you can peruse it a little bit more closely. We rarely have to pull financial aid from students for SAP reasons, or merit aid for that matter.
So we have a couple of people thinking ahead if they enroll at Clark. Do we have a payment plan that helps with paying for Clark?
Sure, yes. The Student Accounts Office manages a monthly payment plan that you can sign up for. And what you can do is, if your bill is going to be $5,000 for the year, you can sign up and pay $500 a month out of your monthly budget in order to satisfy the payment for the year, and so on. So you definitely could do that. There are also some parent loans products that are available that we can help you with if you want to sort of finance some of your college costs over an even longer period of time. So for instance, with a Parent Plus loan, that's a parent loan to undergraduate students. That's a federal program. You can have a 10-year repayment under those programs. So again, there's some more information on our website and in the brochure we'll send you, but there are definitely some ways to sort of stretch out how you pay for college.
I have 2 questions sort of related. I'll answer actually you can answer both of them. Are work study programs available to first-year students, and can international students work on campus?
So absolutely. Students who qualify will be packaged with federal work study in their award letter. it is a bit of a scramble getting that first work study job in the fall. When you get here, we typically have a electronic job board where all the jobs are listed, and you apply that way. And again, you'll get more information about that. We do recommend that students apply to several jobs to increase their chances of actually getting one of those jobs. We don't just hand a student a job. And then even students who, in most years, not all years, but in even students who don't get packaged with federal work study do have some opportunities to work on campus as well. And then for international students, actually, international students can only work on campus. So they also are able to apply for jobs through the same process as our domestic students. So there are a lot of work opportunities on campus. But like I said, it can be a little bit of a scramble trying to get that first job. But from there, it works really well.
Excellent. So if a student's applying regular decision, can they already submit the FAFSA and the CSS profile?
Yes. They're both available as of October 1st any year. So you can definitely submit those now or soon. If you happen to have some changes occur after that fact, you can log into your FAFSA and make some changes, or perhaps you noticed an error. If you have to correct your profile, you have to send us a copy of the printed pages of your profile, and we'll update that for you. But yes, the sooner you can get that into us, the better. We start reading files as soon as we get the information, and then but we don't package them until we know whether students are actually admitted. So that would really be helpful to us.
Excellent. Next question I will take. On the Common App, the student indicated that they did not need aid. They hope to be considered for assistance, including merit aid. How can they correct this? So the question on the Common Application is specifically about, are you planning to apply for need-based financial assistance? So if you answer no to that, but you really want to, you're going to fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile, you should email us so that we can update your application. And so that we know that we're looking for that information. If you only want to be considered for merit-based scholarship, the appropriate answer is no, because you're not planning to fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile. But that answer is absolutely okay. Every student, no matter how they answer that question, will be considered for merit scholarships. So if you answered no, but do want to be considered for need-based aid, and you will be filling out the FAFSA and the CSS profile, just email us, and we'll make sure that we, at the end of this, we chat in our email addresses so that you can reach out to the appropriate offices, and we can make that correction for you. For the next question, is it possible that a combination of merit and need-based scholarship would cover full tuition, room, and board for a student?
Is this an international student or, okay.
That I can't tell.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Oh, I see. We don't, so like I said, on average, we meet about 92% of need. So that means that for the average student, for the average high need student, we don't quite cover all of that for a student. But again, that's our package. As I said before, there are other ways to help pay that bill through outside scholarships, some additional borrowing, things like that. So I wouldn't want that to put you off from doing an application, because it may be more affordable than you think it could be.
Excellent. There are a couple of questions about the LEAP scholarship essays and when students get those questions and what they are. So the way that it works is when you fill out the Common App, just indicate that you're interested in applying for the LEAP scholarship. Once you submit, within 1 or 2 days, you'll get an email from us with a link to the application. The application includes 2 additional essays. One essay, I will tell you now because it's the same every year. It's besides a full tuition, room, and board scholarship, why are you interested in Clark? So just a little bit of information about why you think Clark's a good choice for you. The second question changes year to year, and honestly, off the top of my head, I do not remember what we're using this year, but you'll get it via email within 1 to 2 days of submitting your Common Application. Next question is, I heard you mention that all students are eligible for merit aid, but on average, what % of admitted students receive some form of merit aid? That's a great question. This past year, it was, I think, about 65% received some type of merit aid. So they are readily available. It's a robust program. You don't have to be at the very tippity top of our applicant pool to be considered for a merit aid. A good, solid applicant that we choose to admit will be likely receive a merit scholarship. And then what determines the level of scholarship you're eligible for? Is it the GPA, the essay, et cetera? It's everything. We have a holistic review process. So we look at the strength of the curriculum that you've taken in terms of how much you've taken advantage of the opportunities that are available within your school, how you did in those courses, the level of extracurricular activities and leadership and community engagement you show, what we learn about you in your essays and supplemental writing, what you're recommending, what we learn about you from your recommendation, the level of engagement you've had with us throughout the process. It really takes into effect all of those different pieces and parts of the application. So it's not a simple calculation of what's their GPA and what bucket does that put them in. It's really more complicated than that, but it allows us to target our merit scholarships at students that we think will both thrive academically and as community members at Clark. And that's really what we're looking to do, is bring in students that are going to be successful in both of those arenas. Next question is about what if the parents aren't the ones paying for your education? If a student's going to be paying for their education on their own, how involved do the parents have to be in applying for need-based aid?
So, students can fall into two categories. One would be students who, on the FAFSA, there are several questions that they ask you to determine whether you're dependent on your family anymore. And if you're under the age of 24, if you've never been married, if you don't have a child yourself, if you aren't a veteran, and a few other things, you're considered dependent on your parents for purposes of financial aid. That's a federal regulation, and schools like Clark follow those guidelines for determination of need-based scholarship aid, and who is considered dependent and who's considered independent. So the reverse is true. So if you're over 24, you are married, you've had a child, you're considered independent, and the forms will only collect the information about you and any current spouse. For every once in a while, we run into students who, have had a really large rift with their family of origin. Those kinds of students should probably contact us for some special instructions. We will, we definitely have what we call a waiver process. It's a pretty high bar, and we need some documentation, but we would welcome you giving our office a call, and we'll see what we can do to help walk you through that.
Excellent, thank you. Can you clarify, for an international student, do they have to fill out the FAFSA?
No, international students do not fill out the FAFSA, only the CSS profile.
And then for an international student, when doing the CSS profile, their parents have no financial income documents. How do they fill out the forms?
Okay, so we don't ask for documentation of the income. Some schools do, but we do not. So then you need to do your best estimate, your close estimate of what your family's income and assets are on the profile form. And we'll use those to calculate your family contribution.
Excellent. We're about running out of time, but we do have a few more questions. So we're going to stay a couple minutes late to get through this last group here. Jennifer, is a Parent Plus loan available to international families?
Unfortunately, it is not. There are some borrowing options for international families. Typically, they require that you have a family or close friend who is does have status in the United States and who is creditworthy to be a co-signer. So we do have a number of families every year that do qualify for such loans. They're usually relatively low interest or lower interest than some other markets, but you cannot get a plus loan if you're international.
All right, and then this is more of an admissions question, so I'll take it. Is there an admissions advantage to applying early action? No, not in terms of your admissibility. Your admissibility is determined based on your academic qualifications, how you'll fit into our community, what you'll bring to our community, and that will be true whether you apply early action or regular decision. The advantage really is that you are going to learn much sooner about your admit decision. So finding out in January versus March gives you 2 extra months to seriously consider Clark. both early action and regular decision have until May 1st to make a final decision. And students honestly do start looking at schools much differently once they know they're admitted, once they know how much it's going to cost them. And to have those 2 extra months can really be an advantage in your decision-making process. But in terms of are you admissible, it really won't matter whether you apply early action or regular decision. Jennifer, are there any particular policies regarding twins and how we would package them?
So when we calculate a family contribution, and that's what we're doing with the CSS profile on the FAFSA form, we come up with the contribution, and then it's split for twins. So most schools like Clark split that calculation 60-40, and then we package accordingly to that family contribution. Again, my colleagues in admission will determine the merit amount, and we'll include that in any need-based award that we're able to offer you. Our goal is to have the award, obviously, since they're twins and coming from a family that has the same parental income and assets reported, they should have about the same award. However, sometimes we also look at student savings or student work. So sometimes you might have one twin who earns a little bit more or saves a little bit more. So there could be some slight variations based on differences between the 2 twins and their habits around money, but typically they're spot on identical.
And then the second part of this question is on the admission side of things. Are there colleges that would accept both or none and merit opportunities to attract them? So at Clark, we treat every applicant as an individual. We don't want to hold a twin's success or failure against the other one. So if one has, thrived in school and really shown that they are ready to come to Clark, and the other one maybe struggled a little bit more, we don't want to admit the struggling one if we think that they are not ready for success. We don't want to set up anybody for failure, but we also won't deny the qualified student because we've decided to not admit the less qualified student. So we're going to make individual decisions on each of our applicants. That being said, if they come with similar credentials, just like Jennifer was saying, if they come with similar financial circumstances, they can expect a similar decision. But if they have drastically different applications, they could end up with different decisions. And then we do not have merit scholarships specifically for twins. Again, they are looked at as individuals and will be awarded the merit scholarships based on the strength of their application. Jennifer, there's 2 more questions, and you can take one and I'll take the other one. If you don't qualify for work study on your need-based aid, are you still able to work on campus?
So the short answer is yes. In reality, we're actually making some changes to our, and I'm just saying this because you're gonna see this as you come onto campus. But we are making some changes. We do still have plenty of work for for students who don't get federal work study. But since we're supposed to prioritize people with federal work study, you might find that you can maybe you will be working fewer hours than you thought you might want to, that kind of thing. But there are jobs available for people who don't have work study, and you'll have to apply for them using the online job board that we have, the same way that everybody else does.
Excellent. And then the final question is about, do you have to reapply for merit-based aid per year? And the answer is no. They are 4-year awards. As long as you meet the continuation requirements and stay in satisfactory academic progress, your merit scholarship will follow you through all 4 years. Need-based aid you do have to reapply for, although in subsequent years you just do the FAFSA and what we call the Clark app. So you don't have to redo the CSS profile. So we've kind of simplified the process a little bit for returning students applying for need-based aid. You have filled all of our time plus with some really great questions. We truly appreciate all of your questions and your time with us. I'm going to chat in our email addresses, and you can feel free to email either of us with questions that you either didn't think to ask today or follow-up questions or anything we can do to be helpful. We are here and happy to help. Jennifer, any parting words of wisdom?
Just make sure you get those applications in. We're looking forward to them.
Excellent. Thank you all. Have a great Monday evening.
Good night.
Good night.